Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another recent reads video in which I mainly talk about the books that I finished and give you an, sneak peek, is that the word, sneak peek, into the books that I might be talking about in the next recent reads. I have 3 books finished and one not quite, but we will get to that. Anyway, the first book is the thumbnail book, of course, and that is P.D. James Cover Her Face. I read this together with Terri from Miss Terri Reads. Terri Talks Books. She has various presences on the internet, and this is the first of the series that P.D. James is most famous for, the Adam Dalgliesh series. P.D. James, of course, doesn't need an introduction. She's one, I think, of the most famous next to Agatha Christie, a British crime writer, mystery writer. And I haven't read that much of her. I read Children of Men, which is not your typical P.D. James because it's a sci-fi, dystopian sci-fi. I read Death Came to Pemberley, which, and 1 or 2 standalones that I can't really recall, but I have never read any Dalgliesh. And I went into this book, I think, with Children of Men in mind, even though it's a dystopian, but it's very gritty. This is not. This is cozy, and really cozy in an old-fashioned way, even though it was published in 1962. In other words, you have this kind of aristocratic family, an estate, and a murder happens. A maid is strangled in her bed, or she's found in her bed, strangled. All of the family, aristocratic family members are more or less suspects, and there is the vicar. You have this typical gentry village setting, which is, it's well done. It's just not really my gem. But that I can't blame the book for that. So if you like cozies, this is well done. You have, and it's her first novel also, or the first Dalgliesh, and I think it's her first novel. So you have these, clues and red herrings, and it's kind of a slow burner, fitting the country life. The book is set, by the way, in the present at the time that P.D. James wrote it. So it's not a historical cozy. It's set after World War II, so in the 50s. But it has a much, for me at least, it had a much older, quote unquote, feel. Also, what I find really interesting is that Dalgliesh is not your main character in a way. He is the investigating police officer, yes, and he solves the crime, yes, of course, but he isn't introduced until 2/3 into the book when the murder finally happens. So it's much more a portrayal of this family, the Maxey family, with the matriarch, Eleanor, her husband who has been gravely ill. We don't know quite what, but he is bedridden and not in his right mind. I don't even know whether he is fully awake. And then you have the children, Stephen, who is a doctor in London, a surgeon. You have Deborah, the daughter, who is divorced and has various flings. You have, of course, the servants playing an important role, especially because one of them, Sally, is the murder victim. Like I said, you have the vicar, you have the village doctor, So it's this family and the dynamics of this family surrounded by other people like Mrs. Liddell, who runs the house for quote unquote fallen girls, fallen women getting pregnant out of wedlock, like Sally, who has a little boy when she comes to work as a maid for the Maxis. So that is, I would say, 70% of the book is about that. And Dalgliesh is just a side character in a way. I said to Terri, I was wondering, I really wondered, but we can't ask her anymore, whether when P.D. James wrote this book, she might not even have thought of Dalgliesh as the character of a 20-book series or something. I don't know. So it's nice. I liked it. I didn't love it because I just don't love that type of cozy mystery, especially not if it's not a historical setting, like, the 1900s or something. And I felt that, yeah, it had too much of the attitude, of this very, for instance, there is a scene when, towards the end, when Dalgliesh comes to the house at 8:00 and assembles the whole family and other people, and then he walks them through the crime and finally reveals who the suspect, or who the culprit is. I mean, come on, that's not how the police works in 1960, is it? So yeah, that type of thing just is not really. But if you are into cozy mysteries and set in the, English country, this might be a good pick. The second book I finished is also more one of my special interest books because it's about feminism. I finished it some time ago, and then I realized that I had never talked about it on the channel, and that is this, Women of the Revolution, 40 Years of Feminism, edited by Kara Cochrane. This book was published in the around 2010-ish, kind of, and it is a compilation. So 40 Years of Feminism, you might think it's a kind of a historical overview. It's not. It's a compilation of Guardian articles or opinion pieces, short interviews with a feminist vantage point, starting in 1971. And then going through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the noughts, and the last one is 2010. So I find this type of compilation interesting because it kind of shows you, first of all, Guardian is mainstream feminism. It's not really revolutionary, even though there are some writers who you would consider more, revolutionary in their thinking. But I read this type of book because it shows me what topics were topical in a certain decade, like the 1970s or the 80s. And that I find interesting. And also that, unfortunately, I have to say that some of the pieces that were written in the 1970s or 80s talk about something that is still very relevant and not solved, quote unquote, now. So it shows you the development of gender, the topic of gender equality, and it also shows you what we have achieved in a way, but also the stuff that we didn't achieve. So that's why I thought I find this type of book interesting. But it reads really fast because the articles are like 3-4 pages. The longer ones are like 10 pages, and then not many of them. So it's a quick read, but I am fully aware that this is not a book that might interest everybody. So, but I wanted to mention it, because I want to I'm a completist, so I want to mention all the books that I've read. The third book that I finished that I want to talk about is a reread for me, and I still haven't been able to get a copy, but now I saw one available and I ordered it because it's an Australian author, Jane Rawson. The Wreck, I will leave a picture up here of the cover, published in 2017. It's a debut novel, and Jane Rawson has just published a new book, or is about to publish a new book. But with Australian authors and Australian publishers, I often have difficulties getting them here. And I could probably get an ebook. I didn't check whether it's available as an ebook for me. But you know me, I'm not that, I have an itch here, I'm sorry. I'm not that fond of ebooks. If it's a book that I really want to have on my shelf, and this one is certainly one that I want to have on my shelf because I loved it. It is, again, not for everybody. The premise of the book is a real life event, a shipwreck in 1859, where the great-great-grandfather or great-great-uncle or something of the author actually survived. He's one of the few survivors of this horrible shipwreck off the coast of Australia. So that kind of premise is historical. And then it's historical fiction with sci-fi twist sounds not quite right and might put you off, but with an alien twist. So you have a main character who is actually on the ship and the wreck and is safe, but there is also this other being that has been there on the bottom of the ocean for a long time, and we learn a lot of the book is told through their perspective. I think she's supposed to be a female, but that is not a category of the planet that she came from, and they had to they were overrun by another species, and a few survivors had to flee, and she ended up on Earth, bottom of the ocean, because she's a water creature in the essence. And then she's trying to make a life, attaching herself to George, the survivor, and that has consequences. I don't want to give too much of the plot away, but that has consequences for George's life when he comes back. When he's saved, he's married, he has 2 children, 2 young boys. So it's the span of about 10 years that we see here. And I thought especially the alien creature, it was so well done. It really captivated me. But I love sci-fi. And I think if you expect this to be a historical novel about the 1859 shipwreck, you will probably think, what the bloody F am I reading? So it's only for you if you really enjoy the alien, but not alien in like, Enterprise kind of stuff, but this weird shape-shifting being that has, is able to attach itself to other beings and take on the shape of a human, but it's more the struggle of this human, of this being, to find a new home. I thought, I really loved it, and I loved it on the reread. So it was a good fit for me. But looking at the Goodreads reviews, I can see that people expected something completely different. But if what I tell you, you think, alien shipwreck, it might be for you. I loved it. So, and I'm really happy that soon I will have an actual physical copy. Then the book that I didn't quite finish, I said in the beginning, and that was a biography of a the daughter of a Buddhist priest, Tsunemo. She was born in 1804 in a village in Japan. And that sounded really fascinating. Stranger in the Shogun City by Amy Stanley. And it just didn't speak to me at the time. So I'm not DNFing it. It's put aside for the moment book, because I'm sure that I will read and finish it. I read about maybe half or something and then flipped through it, but it was just not the book for me at the time. So this is the book that I put away for now. And then towards the end of the video, in at least this year, that's what I want to do, just give you a little preview of what is probably coming next. I mentioned this already, so I'm still reading What an Owl Knows by Jennifer Ackerman, together with Heidi from my reading life, and it is all about owls, and I love it. Spoiler alert, I really love it. And the other book is a buddy read with JoSmith that we will finish next week, and that is The Blind Matriarch by Namita Gokhale, an Indian author born 1958 or something. I had never heard of her. This book is on my 1001 books I want to read before I die, written by women, before I die list. And I think I bought it last year at some time and never gotten around to it. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say for now. It's a short little book published a couple of years back, I think 2022 or something. So it's relatively recent. It's contemporary, Indian author. So I was interested in that. And like I said, it's on my list. I will pick up some other books for sure this week that I don't know yet what, so I can't tell you about that. But those are the books that I will most likely finish next week and we'll talk about in my next recent reads. And I think that's it. 3 books finished, 1 not quite, 2 books on the go, and maybe 1 more for this week. Thank you very much for watching all that. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, looking forward to your comments, and I'll talk to you all soon in the next one.